Welcome to the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. In the case today, to help you optimize your wellness journey. I am back today with my partners in crime inside of the First Form app, my two advisors, Mr. Monte and Miss Lacey. How are you guys today?
I'm good.
Ladies, just for the future, it's always ladies first. So when he
All
asks,
right. That's
let's
fair.
hear it.
I'm good. I'm good.
You
I'm
know,
doing all
I
right.
I will fix that and make sure I say Miss Lacey first and then Mr.
There you go. A
How about that?
little more clarity.
Awesome. And we can say, hey, today's podcast is sponsored by our unofficial sponsor, which pays our paycheck and keeps food on our table, First Form and the First Form app. So remember to work with any one of us, you just download the First Form app, you add us via our email, and I'll make sure I put all that in the show's notes so that you guys can work with us and change your body composition based on your goals. So we're back to our little series of guys that we're doing a little bit of re-education. So a lot of the topics that I'm having you guys come on and talk about, is things I've covered before, but I kind of like this format, right? So both of you guys have worked with me on your wellness journey, which is kind of cool in the aspect of like now that we're working together and I get to kind of mentor you guys with questions that you don't see and or don't know yet, right? And honestly, I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing because it's really that part in life of like I'm getting old, right?
You're experienced. You're experienced.
Yeah.
It's like when we hired Bailey. She was a dietitian, and I remember her coming in, and she had this necklace on that said 1998, right? And she wore this, and I'm like, that is, and it's cool to me because that's the year I graduated high school, right? So I'm kind of like, hey, what does that mean? And she goes, that's the year I was born, and I'm like, oh, oh.
That's pretty good.
That's when Jeremy packed up and moved to Florida. That's what I always say. That's when he was
Yeah, I
like,
mean that was I'm like I need to go remote. Working with these kids is just making me feel old. I'm like if you watch the movie Tombstone, the Doc Holliday is in there with oh I'm drawing a blank. Well, Val Kilmer was Doc Holliday, and he's like, "Are you retired?" And he's like, "Not me. I'm in my prime." That's what I kind of feel like in my mid 40s.
how old is that movie?
I was just
Oh,
gonna ask. I've never heard of it.
I
It
don't. Oh,
might be.
what? Homework.
Nope.
I'm sorry. Homework assignment, Lacey.
All right. Tombstone. Got it.
Tombstone. You got to watch it. Days of Thunder is another one that I like to do some quotes from with the teaching. So, but I digress. If you're listening to this and you haven't watched Tombstone, please go watch Tombstone. It is one of the best westerns out there. And I like it better even than. And I'm a Kevin Costner fan. I like the story better in Tombstone than in his Wyatt Earp movie. So just random knowledge if anybody cares. So
I like it.
all
Couple,
right.
couple podcasts in a row.
Yeah.
Movies.
Yep. Today I want to talk about meal planning. Okay. And the reason I want to talk about this is, I have changed the way that I've approached meal planning for individuals now 20 going on 25 years into this practice and inside of teaching individuals. And I just want to put it out there. The reason we do not give people exactly what to do is because no education takes place and no learning takes place. And then unfortunately what we see is people turn around and they haven't learned habits and they haven't learned what to do and they end up gaining their weight back, right? Now, I'm not downing any services when I say this. I may be dating myself, but like Slim Fast, for example, 2 shakes a day, sensible, what was it, dinner, I think, just ordering food and only eating, food that you order. Like you're not learning how to live life by doing that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't have a place, but we really want to kind of define how to take education and then you build your meal plan. I think that is the ultimate goal. The intent of today's education is that individuals can go out and build their own meal plans versus thinking that there is this perfect meal plan out there to produce these results. Now, with that being said, I'm going to pick on you, Monte.
Yeah, I was about to ask if you just want to go straight into my story because I mean it aligns perfectly with it.
I do, and I wanted to be maybe the emotions that you felt when I said what I said to you. I also want you to give a little bit of your history of how you did meal plans and how it worked for you, but then what would happen afterwards, right? Versus, now kind of what we molded in our education and how we help individuals out.
Okay. So basically, how I felt and just going into kind of what happened was I was the individual, who just wanted to go on a strict meal plan, where I was told exactly what to eat and how much to eat, and that was it. With that being said, like it was a struggle a lot of the times, because being married and then especially when it came to having kids and going out and doing things, I was one of those people. I would just take Tupperwares of food with me. So there was no freedom there, and it was kind of stressful. Yes, I got results and it was awesome, but eventually that motivation that I had to do that, the lifestyle side of things, it wasn't there anymore. And what I would do is I would get to a point where I started intuitively eating or just eating without that guidance of somebody telling me, hey, eat 6 ounces of chicken, eat a cup of rice and some vegetables. So then I would just go overboard, not having a plan because, like you said earlier, like didn't know the habits. I didn't know what to do when I didn't have that in front of me. So then I just ate everything. And when I came back, to working with you after having a coach who told me exactly what to eat, how much to eat, you pretty much told me like, hey, like I will work with you as long as we can make this a lifestyle. You can go out to eat with your family, with your wife, enjoy food, realizing that the calories, realizing that food is just energy. And if we can control how much of it we're eating, you'll be perfectly fine. And originally I was like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
And then just had to trust you. I mean, you had never led me wrong before that, and just had to trust you with it and start doing that and learning those habits moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm not picking on anybody when we say, kind of the next few things, but I know you mentioned earlier, Monte, you've had people say, well, maybe this app isn't for me because we educate and people are wanting just to be told exactly what to do, right? And the reason we don't want to do that goes back to the thing I talk about all the time with like learning that all food is just protein, carbs, and fat or a combination of, right? So that when you think of like a Reese's football, I'm going with football because I saw them at the gas station the other day. It's
Mhm.
on the Reese eggs because it's not Easter, it's Reese footballs. Um, Realizing, hey, this is just some carbs and some fat. That's all it is. 1 gram of protein.
No, there's 4 grams of protein for every two of the eggs at least.
Oh, for every two, you going.
Yeah.
So, and what will happen is if we deem food bad or we don't learn, like you were saying, if all we're doing is chicken, broccoli, and rice, and then you go out and you have to eat something else, you don't know what to do. And you fall back into those old habits. You're like, well, I'm already messing up the plan. Let me just eat everything, or let me eat all 6 of the Reese eggs. And that's what we're trying to prevent. We're always looking at long-term success and sustainability in our education, right? So I've had people do that, but like, well, I want to be told what to do, right? And what are some statements that you guys have heard from people when you say, hey, we don't do meal plans? What are some of those things?
Just like you said with the conversation I just had, it's like I don't think this app is for me. Like I have this issue and this issue. I need specific on like what to do. And I mean, like we just kind of cover, say you do that specific diet, right? And then you get to a point where that issue is under control. Now what do we do, right? Are you going to eat like that forever? Is it sustainable? Do you want to do that? Or when that issue is corrected, are you just going to go into old habits and then bring those issues back that we just got rid of?
Yeah.
Right. Wanting to make it a lifestyle, you could hand over that specific plan and that's fine. Like you said, it'll work, it'll get results. You'll see results with that, but it's not teaching you what to do for the long haul to make sure it's just something you can do forever.
And then early on, and I haven't been coaching for super, super long, but earlier on, I would give people that meal plan. I'd be like, here you go. And then what would happen was when they come to do their check-in and they're like, hey, went out to eat this weekend with my wife, or the boss brought food into work and I completely ruined everything. So then Sunday I just went on and just kept going and I'm back on track today. And there was a constant cycle of, okay, like eat those foods, come to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, events come up, there's stuff going on, and like, hey, I fell off this weekend. And then when you think about, trying to lose body fat, being a caloric deficit, we were in a deficit for most of the week, but then we went way up here over the weekend, and then we keep breaking even, which is causing a lot of frustration to people.
100%. Couple definitions. And then for the listener, I want you guys to understand we do have things in place that teach you how to build your own meal plans, right? And resources. So that's what we're going to kind of get to. So I don't want people to think like, man, they don't get meal plans. We do to a degree, right? And we're going to talk about those in here just a second. But a couple definitions. You mentioned intuitive eating. Okay. I really like the word and dislike that word. And what I mean dislike it would be you cannot intuitively eat until you learn what foods are healthy for you and what foods work for you to achieve your goals. Then you can intuitively eat. But just saying, oh, I just intuitively eat, so I'm going to have all 6 of the Reese footballs, that's not intuitively eating. That is just using that word as an excuse. Okay. And while we do encourage people to track their macros, track their nutrition, we don't encourage it 365 days a year, every single day for the rest of your life. We are in the camp that everyone is different. Some people love to do it, right? I remember when I had this big push of like telling people, you don't have to track all the time. We want to teach you. And I would have people messaging like, Jeremy, I like tracking. It makes me feel good. And I'm like, okay, never thought about it from that aspect, right? So that's an individualized approach after we track and learn. Okay. So what we like to teach first and foremost is a concept that we call P squared, right? We try to take our education and make it as simple as possible. So P squared is taking a primary protein source and adding it to a produce. And if you eat a primary protein source and a produce at most meals and snacks, now I say most because the produce is something that we want there most of the time, but we want that primary protein at each meal and at each snack. Okay. But if you're sitting there building your meal plan out, we're going to take a primary protein, we're going to take a produce, and we're going to eat it most of the time. Then, based on if you're doing a little higher carb versus lower carb, you might eat a serving of starches along with that. You may eat a healthy fat like an avocado. There we go with it, right? So it'll kind of vary from that aspect. But P squared is kind of our basic education that we teach to people. And Lacey will speak on that a little bit more in just a second. And then inside the app, we actually have a meal plan available that will allow certain foods to be chosen to build your own meal plan. That is another resource that we use for people who are new, trying to learn what are protein sources, what are some carbohydrate sources that are brand new to learning what macros are. And then the last component that we have is inside of our Team Alpha Facebook group underneath the files, we have a specific 8-week meal plan there that lists out breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 8 weeks. Now, once again, it might not, what we've seen people like, well, I don't like the Big Mac salad, right? We got that. We're not saying that it's a perfect meal plan. It is ideas and gives people baselines to use. So those are our 3 big quote tools that we'll use. And we'll talk a little bit more in a minute here after you guys get your portion in. I'll talk about some projects or examples that people can do to help them have these guidelines of what food to consume.
All right. You want me to start with some P squared?
P squared, yeah. Talk
All
about
right.
how you teach it. I know you show a lot of it on your social media.
Yeah.
But just talk because I like what you said offline earlier when we were talking about meal plans. You're like, I never used that, Jeremy, because I just listened to what you did and
Right.
went that way, which was awesome because that's the way that I teach, right? You didn't use necessarily the meal plan tool inside of the app. You just went with P squared and made those adjustments. Yeah. So just talk about a little bit how you work it into your daily meal plan.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's as simple as it sounds. P squared protein, primary protein source at every meal or snack that I consume. That's also how I teach it to those people who do kind of struggle a little bit on how to plan their day. I'm like, go through every meal you plan to have that day and pick out that primary protein source. So, and think outside the box too, because sometimes people are like, well, breakfast is just cereal. Like there's no protein there. I'm like, well, there is. We just got to find what that is for you. So for me, I mean, it's eggs and egg whites. And even today, I added a little steak to my eggs. I've never had steak and eggs, but I needed a little more protein. So I threw that in there. It was fantastic. So those are my primary protein sources. I'll put fruit with it. I'll put my favorite vegetable with it. I pre-plan my whole day. So the meals I know I'm eating, I'll put that protein in the log and I'll have that pre-tracked. I'll add that produce with it. And then from there, I can tell if I'm going to fall short or go over on my carbs and fats. And generally, I'm short. I need to eat some more. And that's where I get to plug in like the rice, or maybe I want to have potatoes with my eggs for breakfast, or, the kind of what I like to call the fun filler stuff after I cover my bases with the P squared. And a lot of times it's avocado or it's nuts or it's something I enjoy. And that gives me the freedom to not only hit my macros, stay on plan, but get to choose what I want to have. And it can be different every day. I get that variety. So P squared, super simple, easy way to lay out the day. Don't overcomplicate it. It's literally a primary protein source with the produce. And you need to make those lists. Like sit down, think of what primary protein sources, beef, chicken, fish, eggs, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, what do you enjoy? What are you willing to eat? Make that list, have it written down, build those meals on that. All right. So that's going to be the easiest way to start. Same thing with your produce. If you're like, no, I'm not touching X, Y, or Z. Okay, cool. Then don't put that on your list, but put the things you do enjoy on that list, have that ready to go, build your meals off of that.
Awesome. That's what I love having you guys on. You just stole my talking points, right? Too
Yeah, I'm just
good.
trying to be efficient.
Hey, I
Get it
like it.
all in there.
Yeah. So, the tool that we do, I mentioned that we talk about, we do this with our clients, right? We want you, the listener, right now, to take a moment and list out the foods that you enjoy eating. That's a very important part, right? I'm putting my dad voice on right now and slowing my talk down, right? What you like to eat. Okay. Primary protein sources are meat, fish, eggs, some dairy like cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, and protein shakes. Write those down and make a list of foods that you like to eat out of that. What meats do you like? What fish do you like? Okay. I'm going to do a little awkward pause because I literally want you to do this right now. Okay. Unless you're walking outside or you're driving, then I don't want you to make a list. But if you're sitting at home, make your list out. Okay. Do the same thing for produce, right? I had this question one time from a sergeant major at a lecture I was doing, and he was like, Captain Mullins, he's like, what if I don't like veggies? What do I tell my wife? And I'm like, whoa, time out, Sergeant Major. Hey, I'm not going to answer that for you. So you go home and get me in trouble with your wife. But to answer that question, what are the benefits of veggies? And he took a minute and he's like, hey, they're high in fiber and they're high in nutrients. I'm like, exactly. What are berries? High in fiber and high in nutrients. I was like, so, let's not get caught up in, okay, we got to eat X amount of veggies a day. And that's why we lump that into produce. Okay. So make a list of the fruits and veggies that you enjoy eating. And then we're going to work those into the meal plan, right? So now what you have is you have this tool that you can use of this list of protein, these list of produce, and you can start planning out the base of your meal plan. And once again, we might have to fine tune a little bit, as Lacey was mentioning, add in a little bit of starch every now and again for some people. We're adding in some healthy fats for some people, depending on what the goals are, depending on what their calorie goal is. Okay. Second thing I noticed in there, you had steak and egg for breakfast.
I did. That was my husband inspiring that. I'm like, that seems weird, but I'll try it. It was really good.
And you're going to go watch Tombstone tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be a day.
By Friday, Monte, she's going to be wearing her cowboy hat,
Yeah.
on the call. I mean, it's going to be awesome.
I don't know about that, but
Can't wait to see it.
oh man.
Monte, meal plan. Talk a little bit about the meal plan in the app, how it's set up, how we can use that for an individual that, once again, we talked about P squared, how people can do that tool on their own, but also inside the app, there's a meal plan that's kind of set up the same way.
Yeah, it's kind of set up the same way. And going back to what we talked about earlier, like just me being told exactly what to eat, how much to eat. The meal plan in the app is not as many talking points as like with the P square. Super, super simple. In the app, you will go in there, you will select the meal plan option, and it's going to list out, it's going to have 5 meals. So it's a set 5 meals. You can eat less, you can eat more, but the way it's set up is to go off of your goals, your numbers that you have, and where you currently are and where you're trying to get to. So there's 5 meals, and there's going to be a protein at every single meal. There's going to be a carb, and there's going to be a veggie, kind of like what Lacey just went over. So each meal, you're going to click on the protein source. It's going to have a drop down list of protein sources. You're going to pick which ones that you like and add it in there, and it's going to tell you exactly how many ounces or how many grams you need to fuel the goals that you have set. And then the same thing, carbs. It's going to drop down menu. What carbohydrate do you like? Add it in there. It's going to tell you this is how many ounces, this is how many grams, however you want to weigh it out and measure it. And then the same thing with veggies. And you pretty much just simply do that for each of the 5 meals. And when you do that, you're going to be landing around the macros you would want to be to earn results, as if you were tracking your macros by counting everything and weighing everything out. But once again, there's no freedom inside of that. So if you go out to eat, yeah, you might be able, I mean, a lot of places you go, you can get a protein, a carb, and a veggie, right? So you can kind of just base it off of that. But if you go somewhere, say Texas Roadhouse, and you want to eat a couple of those rolls, it's not going to have that option in there. So there's a lot less freedom. It's a lot more strict. And you can definitely learn how to set up plates, how to eat that way, but there's not going to be that freedom to make it that long-term sustainable thing unless that's the kind of person you are, because there are people like that who want to every single day know exactly what they're eating the same stuff, not changing anything up.
which is okay. We're not saying that that's not right. And what we've learned by doing this is I've seen more success, right? And that's what we're kind of getting to, and you got all these options you can do. And then I mentioned this, I'll touch on a little bit more inside of our Facebook group under our files. We have an 8-week meal plan that literally has the recipes, scheduled out what you're going to do. So it kind of helps, give some different ideas. But learning what these foods are, right? You can make choices. So you go to your restaurant, and you're like, okay, I'm at, what'd you use as an example? Texas Roadhouse. All right. So I'm going to have a steak. I'm not going to go with the salad and the dressing because I don't want to use the calories of the dressing. I'm going to go with vegetables, and then I'm going to eat a few of those rolls. That's what I'm going to do if I go there, right? And so then I've got my protein, I got my produce, and then the rolls would be my quote unquote starch, right? And some fat because let's face it, they got butter on them, right? But that's how you can learn to do that versus being in that scarcity mindset of, okay, I can only eat chicken and broccoli and rice. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about meal plans is something that we do encourage is do not stress about being perfect, right? When you're starting your wellness journey, track your food, develop a baseline, be as consistent as possible. Then we can start massaging how much of these foods that we're eating to produce the macros that work best for you. Okay. We talked about this on the previous podcast we did with calories and protein. Those are just starting points. And I always like make the joke, if I could tell someone exactly how many macros to eat, how many calories, how many protein, carbs, and fat without the input versus the output, I would be owning an island somewhere and I would already be retired by selling that formula. Okay. We can't. And this coaching business is truly an art form because it's input versus output. It's taking the information that we get, the macronutrients, how much someone is sleeping, how much stress someone has in their life, what all these aspects are, and then the results that we're getting. And then we change the input to change the output. Okay. So if you're new to the wellness journey, you're new to tracking, develop a baseline. Don't worry about being perfect. Yes, try to hit your protein and calories. Yes, have a protein and a produce at each meal. Then we can fine tune that as we go along. So anything you guys want to add to kind of wrap up the meal planning?
I have nothing. I think
Yeah.
pretty much covered it. It's pretty solid, simple.
Yep. I mean, the only thing I would say, just kind of as I'm going through what I said throughout the last 15 or so minutes, is like, don't be afraid to do the pre-packaged meals, right? I was not downing them earlier. I was just saying, like, you want to learn, okay? But if you're doing pre-packaged because you work 10, 12 hours a day and it's easy for you to do some pre-packaged meals, go for it. And I can't remember where we talked about this. It may have just been on one of our education calls. We're all about the same in how we do our meal prep per week. We're batch cookers, right? So all of us don't cook one time a week and fix our meals. We kind of do, okay, hey, we're going to have, for example, my family, we're going to do taco night. So taco night, we do sliders, we do taco, and we do beef, right? We just cook up all that at one time. Tacos is what we're having for that night, but then we have sliders for the rest of the week, and we have, burgers the rest of the week. So, that's one thing I was just thinking. I didn't want that to come off as wrong. There's nothing against using these prepackaged meal companies. I was just using it as an example of how it can go wrong.
100%.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Hey, appreciate your time. I appreciate you guys making the effort and scheduling out to do these so that as we drop into this next challenge, which when the listener's probably hearing this, it'll either be at the challenge or, a little bit before that. So we just want to make sure we provided this, re-education, from the perspective of having you guys on here. And once again, we appreciate you guys listening and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.